At 3 o'clock in the morning on February 1502, a piercing cry cut through the stone corridors of the Este castle. It was not a scream of fear, nor of agony, but something far more unsettling. The guards lowered their eyes in silence, while diplomats and courtiers exchanged tense glances, each of them fully aware that what they were hearing was no ordinary passion, but the enactment of most dangerous and secretive ritual of power in Renaissance Europe. On that freezing dawn, as Ferrara slumbered under blood-red moon, an event unfolded in the ducal chambers that would alter the balance of Italian politics. Something so intimate and yet so strategic that official documents locked it away for nearly 5 centuries. When those papers surfaced, they revealed how a 22-year-old woman transformed her body into the most devastating weapon of diplomacy her world had ever seen. Picture a royal bedchamber where every sigh and every gasp is treated like currency, where a woman's flesh becomes a battlefield and the consummation of marriage is carried out not as romance, but as ritualized warfare capable of toppling dynasties and cementing empires. What you are about to uncover is not just the truth of a scandalous wedding night. It is the revelation of a political protocol so secret and so sexually explicit that it remained buried in Europe's most confidential archives for centuries. This is how Lucrezia Borgia, daughter of a pope, twice widowed through political murders, shifted from pawn to predator, not how one night of carefully observed intimacy became the cornerstone of a dynasty. A night spoken of in whispers like 3 words, carried by a royal chancellor. Enough to explain why this woman both feared and desired shaped the destiny of Italy forever. Brace yourself. What took place before dawn will shatter everything you thought you knew about sex, power, and politics in the Renaissance. If your heart is already racing from this glimpse into history's forbidden chambers, just imagining what lies ahead. Give this video a like if you want us to keep unearthing hidden protocols that reshaped empires. And in the comments, tell us the name of that queen, duchess, or courtesan whose darkest secrets you want exposed. The one mentioned most will star in our next investigation. Subscribe and ring the bell, because if these truths are only revealed to those who dare join our secret brotherhood. The year was 1502, the height of Borgian influence. Rodrigo Borgia, Pope Alexander VI, had secured control of Italy through marriages that turned his children into weapons on the political chessboard. In this volatile climate, Lucrezia was more than just a noble bride. She was the embodiment of sexual diplomacy itself. Italy was splintered into rival powers, where every union between aristocrats functioned like a treaty. Every wedding bed a battlefield. The duchies of Ferrara, Milan, Naples, and the papal states held together bifragile alliances sealed between silk sheets. Marriage here was not a boot love. It was survival. For the Este family of Ferrara, the stakes were life and death. The ruling Duke Il had staked the future of his dynasty on the alliance with the Borgias. His son and heir, Alfonso d'Este, would become the living instrument of that gamble. Negotiations concluded on December 30th, 1501, with terms that revealed just how transactional this marriage truly was. Lucrezia's dowry was 100,000 gold ducats, enough to fund entire cities for a year. Yet the real price of this deal would be measured not in gold, but in flesh on the wedding night itself. Records from the period show that secret protocols existed to guarantee aristocratic unions. Consummation was never simply private. It demanded official witnesses and confirmation thus legitimacy of the entire dynasty depended on it. The first night of marriage became a quasi-public performance where the outcome decided the fate of nations. The chosen date, February 2nd, was no coincidence. It was the feast of the purification of the Virgin, a Catholic holy day. By aligning the wedding bed with sacred ritual, the Borgias and Estes fused the divine and the carnal, making this consummation not only a sexual act, but a ritual of dynastic sanctification. Lucrezia entered Ferrara, carrying the weight of disastrous marriages. At 22, her beauty, described by the poet Petro ben Boaz, rare and luminous, was rivaled only by her blood-stained reputation. Her first husband, Giovanni Forza, had fled after being accused of impotence. Her second, Alfonso of Aragon, strangled to death inside the Vatican, a victim of papal intrigue. This bride was no innocent dot. She was a survivor armed with intelligence, sensuality, and a dangerous mastery of turning weakness into strength. Her new husband could not have been more different. Alfonso Dust, 25 years old, was a soldier and engineer, and a man who forged his own cannons with bare hands. Unlike the weak courtiers of other Italian courts, Alfonso radiated power without needing to prove it. He played music with elegance, designed artillery with precision, and embodied both the strength of a warrior and the refinement of a Renaissance prince. The collision of these two figures, Lucrezia, weaponized through seduction, and Alfonso embodying raw and pragmatic power, set the stage for one of the most explosive unions of the age. The unexpected meeting at Bentivoglio on January 3 had already changed everything. In that private encounter, Lucrezia and Alfonso discovered a spark of real attraction, something no one had planned for, and something that would complicate the cold calculations of political strategy. What was supposed to be a ritualized performance was now laced with authentic passion, giving the coming night an intensity that neither church nor state could fully control. On February, Ferrara became a theater. The triumphal procession that carried Lucrezia into the city was staged like an overture to the true performance that would follow behind locked doors. Citizens cheered as she passed, cloaked in a French gown lined with man, and a lace of diamonds and rubies catching winter light. But as the P applauded, another performance was already being prepared in secret. In the palace corridors, spies and scribes positioned themselves to record this malice detail of what was about to unfold. Among them was Isabella d'Este's own chancellor, placed there by the Duchess herself, a rival determined to turn the most intimate of knights into political intelligence. This was no coincidence. It was espionage, a deliberate act to gather proof that could later be weaponized in the thick-throat world of Italian power politics. The date itself added another layer of symbolism. On February 8th, the feast of the purification of the Virgin Mary carried with it a paradox: sanctity and sexuality fused together, the sacred colliding with the profane. Nothing about this timing was accidental. Every gesture, every ritual had been planned to turn the consummation into a dynastic sacrament, binding not only two bodies, but two great houses. Inside the ducal apartments, the stage was set. Crimson velvet curtains enclosed the bed like theater drapery. Silver candelabras flicked against Flemish tapestries depicting wars and alliances, a reminder of what was truly at stake. Here, in a room transformed into both sanctuary and stage, the most important political performance of the decade was about to be enacted. When Alfonso entered, both and Lucrezia knew their roles. Their meeting at Bentivoglio had already awakened something genuine between them, but now that spark had to be harnessed and displayed as proof. What would unfold was not merely a private act. It was a ritual rooted in centuries of aristocratic custom. For noble marriages in Europe, consummation was more than intimacy. It was a certificate of legitimacy, a binding act that privateers could be born, alliances secured, dynasties continued. But in Renaissance Italy, this proof required witnesses, silent, hidden, but present nonetheless. The royal bed became a courtroom. The act of love, a verdict that would decide the future of nations. Lucrezia, hardened by two disastrous marriages, understood this better than anyone. Giovanni Forza's impotence had turned into public humiliation and annulment. Alfonso of Aragon's death by strangulation in Vatican chambers had shown her that weakness in the marriage bed meant weakness in politics, and weakness in politics could mean death. These lessons shaped her strategy. She would no longer be porn. She would survive, even dominate, by turning her body into a weapon. Alfonso too grasped the stakes. His virility was already known, but knowledge was not enough. It had to be proven, documented, witnessed. The Este family could not risk whispers of impotence or infertility. To ensure legitimacy, the ritual called for more than one consummation. Every act would be recorded as irrefutable evidence, ashled against denouements, scandals, or assassination plots. And so the night began. The first consummation carried a charge neither had expected. Real passion mixed with political necessity producing an energy that startled Eventham. For once, duty and desire were aligned. This union was not just staged, it was lived. The second consummation record, by Isabella d'Este's embedded chancellor, showed just how closely every moment was monitored. To outsiders, this might seem an invasion, but in the eyes of the court, it was duty. The bedchamber was simply an extension of the treaty room, and every sigh and cry was political testimony. The third and final act sealed the ritual. It was no longer just the bonding of two individuals. It was the creation of a living alliance, a new axis of power between the Borgia and d'Este families. The official records of that night provided the legal and political validation both houses needed. Alfonso's endurance and composure prevented it. Only his virility, but his psychological steel. To perform under such pressure required the same discipline he showed as a military leader. Lucrezia, for her part, revealed survivors' instincts that had kept her alive through betrayal and blood. Together, they had transformed a dangerous test into triumph. This night of passion witnessed, documented, and sanctified was not just about love. It was politics. It was power. Lucrezia's ability to transform weakness into power, turning her own body into ashield against political destruction's Sida, precedent that would echo across the Renaissance. The meticulous notes recorded by the official chancellor became more than gossip or scandal. They became a binding document, a certificate of dynastic legitimacy that could protect the Estaba union for decades. Within those pages lay a guarantee against annulment, against plots to undermine the marriage, against the Escas's rival powers, often used to launch military or diplomatic attacks that night, on February 2, 1502, created a new paradigm. From then on, documented multiple consummation was not an oddity, but the standard for validating politil unions of the highest importance. The royal bedchamber was no longer simply a private space. It was a courtroom, a stage, and a battlefield where sexual performance itself determined fate of empires. When dawn broke on February 3rd, two individuals had been transformed. No longer simply bride and groom, Lucrezia and Alfonso emerged as architects of a new political reality. Their successful execution of the dynastic ritual gave the alliance a foundation, so strong it would ripple across Italy for decades, showing the world that sexuality, when harnessed strategically, could be the sharpest weapon in a ruler's arsenal. The reverberations spread far beyond Ferrara's castle walls. What had begun as an intimate ritual was now a political earthquake. Rivals who had prayed for the marriage to collapse were left powerless in the face of documentaprof. They could no longer dismiss Lucrezia as a tainted pawn or Alfonso as a mere soldier. The record stood as irrefutable evidence. This union was both legitimate and unbreakable. Almost overnight, Lucrezia's position within the Este court transformed. No longer a tolerated outsider, she became essential. Her survival was now tied directly to the survival of the dynasty itself. Her death would bring chaos. So her presence guaranteed stability. For the first time, she was untouchable. Alfonso, too, emerged stronger. His performance had proven not only virility, but resilience under pressure. Where their noble heirs had faltered, humiliated by annulments or whispers of inadequacy, Alfonso had triumphed. His reputation as the true successor of Ferrara was no longer a question but a fact. But not everyone rejoiced. Isabella d'Este, who had always ruled court life as the unrivaled star, now faced a dangerous rival. Lucrezia had turned her from a target into a force. The rivalry between Fetwa women, already tense from their first meeting at Malabro, now exploded into a silent war. Ferrara became a stage for psychological combat. Subtle gestures, whispered rumors, quiet contests for influence that would shape court for years to come. Thelians also reshaped Italy's geopolitics. France, Spain, and rival duchies were forced to acknowledge the Sti-Ba bond as a consolidated power bloc. Diplomatic calculations shifted, treaties, trade routes, and military strategies had to be redrawn around the fact that the Boiars and Estes had successfully fused into one. Yet politics was not the only battlefield. On September 5, 1502, Lucrezia gave birth to a stillborn daughter after convulsions in labor. Rumors erupted immediately. Was the child conceived on the wedding night or earlier during her strict meetings with Alfonso before Ferrara? Chroniclers obsessed over Thetomline because paternity was not simply personal. It was political proof of legitimacy. Lucrezia nearly died herself, struck with childbed fever. Many women did not survive. Her recovery was viewed by contemporaries as proof of divine favor, evidence of her strength and reassurance that she could still provide heirs. But the ordeal changed her. Confronting death in childbirth hardened her sense that survival in this world demanded more than beauty or obedience. It demanded strategy. This new clarity led her down another dangerous path. About a year later, she entered into a relationship with Francesco Gonzaga, Marquis of Manua, and the husband of her bitter rival, Isabella d'Este. It was an affair born not only of passion, but of calculation. By choosing Isabella's own husband, Lucrezia struck at her rival's pride while securing another line of political protection. The relationship was carefully hidden, yet its impact was seismic. Letters between Lucrezia and Francesco, uncovered centuries later, reveal both authentic emotion and political cunning. She was not merely manipulating him. She found in Francesco a genuine connection, yet one that doubled as insurance against her enemies. Her ability to balance this affair while preserving her marriage to Alfonso showed the mastery she had developed over sexual diplomacy. She was no longer simply a survivor. She was a strategist, weaving webs of intimacy and loyalty that could shield her against any threat. For Isabella, the affair was devastating. To lose influence at court was one thing, but to lose her husband's attention to Lucrezia was an act both personal and political. The rivalry that followed would haunt Ferrara's court for decades. For Isabella d'Este, the revelation that her husband had fallen into the arms of her fiercest rival was more than humiliation. It was a political catastrophe. Court whispers turned into daggers. The very woman she sought to diminish had struck back with a weapon. Isabella herself had mastered influence through desire. Lucrezia had not only avenged herself, but she had redefined the game, showing that intimacy could be weaponized as effectively as armies. Her affair with Francesco Gonzaga, sustained for years, became a new model of Renaissance sexual diplomacy. These were not fleeting romances. They were tactical extensions of politics. Aristocratic affairs became massive nets, diversifying one's network of protection, just as kingdoms diversified their alliances. Other noble houses soon followed, weaving their own webs of lovers and confidants as shields against betrayal and exile. Meanwhile, the legitimate heirs Lucrezia Borgia cemented her position beyond dispute. Each birth was living proof that the legitimation protocol of her wedding night had succeeded. With every child, she was no longer simply tolerated. She was indispensable, The Este dynasty's survival was tied directly to her body, her resilience, and her ability to deliver continuity. Her evolution was extraordinary. Once a pawn trapped in the brutal mechanics of dynastic marriage, Lucrezia had transformed into an architect of her own fate. She turned the vulnerabilities of her gender into tools of power, showing that strategy could coexist with servile. Where others were broken by circumstance, she mastered it. Thuding night of February 2nd, and Thurches It Left Behind, remain one of most detailed windows into how Renaissance marriage diplomacy truly worked. Strip away the fairy tale gowns and poetic vows, and what remains is raw calculation. Unions forged not for love but for power. Consummations staged and documented to prevent annulment. Sexual protocols designed to anchor alliances in something irrefutable. The template pioneered by the Borgias and the said spread. Documentation plus consummation became the formula for unshakable alliances. Even after their deaths, their descendants inherited not just lands, but a methodology. A cold, precise system where the bedroom was as crucial to politics as the battlefield. Lucrezia's transformation from pawn to power broker stands as one of the most striking examples in European history of a woman seizing agency in a world designed to crush her. She proved that intelligence, courage, and strategist intimacy could bend the rules of a system thought immovable. And yet, her story is only one shard of a hidden mosaic. The archives of Europe hold countless similar secrets. Protocols buried because they reveal truths too scandalous for the official record. Queens, duchesses, and courtesans wielded sexuality as a weapon, every bit as decisive as diplomacy or war. Did you know Catherine de' Medici perfected a system of seduction that let her control 3 French kings? That Anne Boleyn's mystery of erotic politics shattered England's Catholic unity and birthed a new religion? That Isabella of Castile sued Spain's unification, reorchestrating a consummation? Sotherilly witnessed it required 5 official chancellors. These women were never passive. They were lethal players in a dangerous game, rewriting rules from inside gilded cages. If this glimpse into Lucrezia's world has unsettled you, if it's shown you that the story's most forbidden truths are far more fascinating than the Sanity's Ed myths, then you've only scratched the surface. Hidden in Europe's secret arches are entire systems of bedroom diplomacy that reshaped empires. The past still has secrets, and you are about to discover them. Please like and subscribe to the channel. We will see you in the next one.